cabbages, bandages, and goldfish crackers. Are y'all sick of Tombstone stories yet? Well, if you are, get ready to be hospitalized because we have one more. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be reviewing The Amazing Spider-Man number 57. Spoiler warning ahead, we will be diving into the contents of the comic book itself, so if you haven't read it, just as a heads up. If you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and without further ado, let's jump right into this. Our story begins at Rikers Island, where Tombstone is being led to the visitor area by some of the prison guards to meet none other than Spider-Man. Now, this beginning section is mainly used to exposition dump what has already occurred. The first thing Spider-Man does tell Tombstone is, let's get down to business. Tombstone replies with, the kind of business that we got doesn't get solved over the phone. Now, as I've already mentioned, this entire section is really just to exposition what has already happened. I've read the story just about 3 times just to thoroughly understand what's going down in the comic and, to understand overall the ASM comic volume. And Spider-Man really doesn't have a reason to even be in this prison whatsoever. He's just kind of there to exposition dump. I mean, why would he be at a prison visiting Tombstone for no apparent reason, except to possibly instigate? Well, anyways, while he's there, conveniently enough, Tombstone receives the news that he is actually free to go on bail. For some reason, Spider-Man is surprised by it. He's like, what? You made bail? And Spider-Man punches the counter, leaving a crack on it. There we go. Some more of our tax dollars being used to replace this countertop that Spider-Man just destroyed. Well, he really didn't destroy it. He just made cracks. Spider-Man, upon hearing this news, he leaves the prison, goes back to his civilian clothes as Peter Parker, and he confronts Michelle, the lawyer, who came to save Tombstone. If y'all remember, her name is Michelle. Peter did go out on a date with her one time. It ended up going horribly because of course it did. So Peter, upon confronting Michelle, is very pissed off that she did her lawyerly job and freed her client. Peter's a smart guy. He invented his web shooters and his web fluid. How doesn't he know how the justice system works? I mean, of course Tombstone is going to be out on bail. The dude's possibly rich from underground money. No matter what the cost, the guy's going to be out, of course. That still doesn't excuse the fact that he still has trials, so all his crimes are still going to be sought after in court. Then the story moves over to Janice Lincoln and Randy Robertson, where they're having a conversation on both of them escaping New York to avoid any retaliation from Janice Lincoln's father, Tombstone. After Janice effectively betrayed Tombstone because Tombstone betrayed her in gang war. Just a lot of betraying going on. And Randy's like, oh, why would Tombstone be coming after me? I mean, I didn't do anything. Janice follows it up with, you made me fall in love with you. And he knows that. My dad's a bad guy, but he's not going to put a hit on his daughter. That means he has to get you. Now, little does she know, we read the previous issue, and of course her father would definitely take her out. And not for a lovely dinner. Once Janice finishes packing, she does state that, luckily, Spider-Man owes her a favor. Which is a favor from the very previous issue where Spider-Man talked her into throwing her father under the bus. So now her favor is gonna get redeemed here. Then the story moves on to Gracie Mansion, the home of Mayor Luke Cage. There we have Luke Cage, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man conversing over what Tombstone would possibly do now that he's out on bail. They do establish that Tombstone still has trials, so there's still that going for him. But since he's free, he's definitely gonna try to retaliate on Randy and Janice Lincoln. So they plan to possibly move both of those characters around to a safe area. Luke Cage does acknowledge that Tombstone has some men within the police force, so whatever plan they come up with, it's just gonna get relayed right over to Tombstone. Effectively, Spider-Man and Tombstone are trying to outsmart each other. Sure enough, Luke Cage's concerns about the police force relaying information to Tombstone was in full effect. Now we have Tombstone's White Rabbit team getting ready to try to break Randy and Janice away from the police force during their transfer. Both White Rabbit and Tombstone are on the phone with each other. White Rabbit questions, you think they're gonna move soon? Tombstone replies with, yeah, still got a few good ears on the police force. You just make sure you're ready, Rabbit. White Rabbit responds with, about that, boss. Does it have to be me? Janice, she's my friend. Tombstone is very adamant and replies with, and I'm your boss. and this is a job. We good? I actually like this part of the story, ladies and gentlemen, because White Rabbit actually seems genuinely concerned over her friend, Janice Lincoln. I mean, White Rabbit was invited by Janice to her bachelorette party. Tombstone is effectively trying to get her to work against Janice, because of course, that's her boss. The entire time Tombstone and White Rabbit are conversing over the phone, Tombstone is in a hidden location where we inevitably find he's actually just across the street from Janice Lincoln's apartment, watching Randy and her the entire time. So the moment finally comes where the police force has to transfer Randy and Janice Lincoln to a safe area. There's an entire police force right outside of her apartment, and there's an armored van as well to do the transferring. Spider-Man is on top of the van, keeping an eye out on things. Now while that's going down, White Rabbit and the Digger are getting into position to break out Randy and Janice. They already know what route the police force is gonna take, so both White Rabbit and Digger are underground. The Digger lifts up a train track right over his head, creating a ramp. Y'all can already see where this might go. Multiple times the Digger complains that their arms are getting tired. It leads me to believe that they're gonna screw things up. Their arms are gonna get tired, they're just gonna release the train tracks, and their plan is gonna get messed up. But no, that doesn't happen. Now with Randy and Janice now in police custody in the armored van, and it's making its way to its rendezvous point, Spider-Man is just on top of it, keeping an eye out on things to make sure everything goes smoothly. Of course, it doesn't. The moment the armored van gets to a particular spot, White Rabbit tells one of her goons inside of a train to start the train going, and if y'all remember, the Digger's holding up the train tracks, creating a ramp. You can already see where this might go. So they time it perfectly spot on to the point where once the train goes right onto that ramp, it breaks through the concrete on the top floor, the main floor, and impacting the armored van that's on the street driving down to its rendezvous point. Now with all this chaos going down, the White Rabbit and Digger and her goons move up to try to extract Randy and Janice. Instantly, Spider-Man makes a move on the Digger because he is the toughest character out of all of them, while the rest of the police force tries to prevent White Rabbit and her goons from extracting. Unfortunately for the police force, White Rabbit has the female version of Electro on her side, so she's just shocking everyone, effectively clearing out the path to go extract. Once the armored van's doors get broken open, White Rabbit walks in and starts talking to Janice. Janice tells Randy to get down, but White Rabbit's like, "Shut up, Janice. I don't have much time. Your dad has sent me to off you. You have to get out of the city." This is when we get revealed that inside of the armored truck, it's not Janice and Randy, it's actually She-Hulk and Randy. She-Hulk is just wearing a hoodie, so you can't really see her features up until this point. So White Rabbit is surprised. She looks up at She-Hulk and she's like, "She-Hulk? Where's Janice?" She-Hulk replies with, "She never left. She's still safe at her apartment." White Rabbit starts talking to herself, saying, "Oh God, he knew I couldn't do it. She is not safe." Making us believe that Tombstone knew this entire charade was going down from the very beginning. He knew every single detail about the plan. He set up White Rabbit to go do this extraction, basically setting her up for failure because he knew she wasn't going to be able to take out Janice. Janice is still at her apartment, safe and sound, well, for the moment at least, because as White Rabbit has mentioned, she is definitely not safe. Back at Janice's apartment, she hears a blam 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 from a weapon. Someone yell, "Aye!" Janice, hearing trouble outside of her apartment, she quickly heads to her closet to try to get her costume for action. What costume am I referring to? Well, the Beetle costume, because she is the Beetle. She's desperately trying to get her costume on before any trouble comes across her. She doesn't manage to get anything on before she hears a voice behind her say, "Janice, I wish I didn't have to do this." She turns around to look at the voice with her costume on her hand because of course she didn't manage to put on her costume yet, only to find her dad Tombstone waiting there with a weapon. Back at the armored van, She-Hulk finally realizes that Janice is not safe where she is. She comes out of the armored vehicle saying, "We've got to go. Tombstone knows. He's got..." It cuts away to, of course, Janice getting confronted by Tombstone. And we're left on a to be continued, ladies and gentlemen. Now the comic doesn't end there. At the very end, there are 4 pages that give us a preview of the Chasm Curse of Cain comic. We get a little message saying, "And now, enjoy this special preview of Chasm Curse of Cain #1, free of charge, on sale now." Just right off the bat, I freaking cringed. I don't know, man. I was having a nervous breakdown when I saw that free of charge message. Like, dude, I bought the comic. You can't be telling me this is free of charge unless these are actual extra pages that are really not a part of the comic, but just extra pages that they added in. Now, I'm too lazy to actually count all the pages from a normal comic book to see if these are actual additional pages or if we're just getting robbed of these 4 pages that they just didn't want to include more story in there. Nevertheless, we do get 4 pages of a preview of Chasm, the Curse of Cain. Preview is probably a very generous word to describe it. It's basically the same exact thing that we got from the free comic book day from 2024, just basically getting implemented in a different way in this 4 pages. Some random civilian is getting attacked by a monster in the subway, and Chasm, Hallows Eve show up, they introduce themselves, supposedly saving the civilian, while we get 1 page of Cain just complaining over the fact that he's searching for Chasm in the sewers and it just smells like shit. If you've read the free comic book day from 2024, you sort of have an idea over what these quote-unquote free of charge pages are. If you haven't read that free comic book day, then you already have an idea reading this comic over what is even happening in the free comic book day of 2024. Overall, I could say I enjoyed the comic for what it was. It wasn't anything too mind-blowing, nothing too crazy that I would highly recommend, but as far as this particular volume goes, it's a good addition to it. The beginning section with Spider-Man meeting Tombstone in the visitor area at Rikers Island just didn't make any sense. Like, why was Spider-Man there? What's his reason to be there unless he was just instigating Tombstone? Sure, I accept the fact that it's just an exposition dump, but give me a reason on why Spider-Man's even there. Like, what the heck? And then the part where Peter comes across Michelle, Tombstone's lawyer, right outside of the prison, that definitely pissed me off. Like, are the writers expecting us not to know how the justice system works? I feel like I'm being treated like a dumbass as I'm reading this. Not to mention also making Peter Parker seem like a dumbass. Like, the guy is supposed to be smart and you're telling me he doesn't know how this works? Well, from that point onward, the rest of the comic was actually rather enjoyable. A compliment that I gave the previous issue was the fact that the characters were actually believable, and this also goes the same route, except for that beginning section, of course. John Romita Jr. also made She-Hulk look decently nice. I love the fact that they also implemented White Rabbit to just be more concerned over her friend Janice. Although she was played by Tombstone, he knew White Rabbit didn't want to betray Janice. Set her off on a course anyways. On another note, typically action sequences in ASM involving this particular writer don't really flow very well, or don't even happen at all. In general, they're just not interesting. In this case, the moment the train broke through the ground and it intercepted the armored van, and the action just went down, it brought me back immediately to the early 2000s where John Romita Jr. was also creating the artwork. For a moment there, it brought me back to the origin story of the Digger, and Spider-Man fighting the Digger definitely sealed that. Now, the only complaint I say I probably would have that just kind of doesn't make any sense would be the guards that were quote-unquote possibly guarding Janice right outside of her apartment right before Tombstone offed them, to confront her. So y'all are telling me that Luke Cage, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man created this plan. They knew Janice was gonna be staying behind. Why did Spider-Man go with the armored van? Why didn't Spider-Man stay behind to guard Janice? I mean, She-Hulk was already in the armored van to protect Randy. She was definitely good there. So why wasn't like Luke Cage or Spider-Man left behind to guard Janice just right there? Well, I'm probably speaking way too soon because we don't get to see what Luke Cage's involvement in this plan is. So maybe he actually stayed behind. He, for some reason, just wasn't up close protecting Janice. Maybe he's like on the roof or something. Maybe the next issue is going to start with the confrontation between Tombstone and Janice, and that's when Luke Cage is probably going to pop in. Well, anyways, for what it was, the comic book was alright to read. I didn't actually get a sense of dread reading it, so that's good. Anyways, those are my thoughts on the comic book itself. Let me know what you guys think if you read the comic. Did you guys like it? Did you guys hate it? Do you guys love the fact that they're continuing more Tombstone? Well, anyways, that is all I have for you today, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace!